turn to Coinbase and talk about a 100 million transaction that has a few people thinking Coinbase might be up to something. This is according to a report from the Wall Street Journal alleging that Coinbase has been opening up its own proprietary trading firm, including a $100 million transaction that was settled earlier this year. The key point in this is Coinbase trading against its own clients by operating its own proprietary internal trading scheme, essentially another way to make revenue knowing what they're doing with their own order book. Coinbase wrote a blog post saying that the report itself from the Wall Street Journal was false and seemingly misleading based on a misunderstanding between client firm money and the firm's money itself. Right now, we don't have a lot more information than that, but it is interesting going into a bear market and looking at the spread of different exchanges out there, what these firms are doing, and if they are up to any games. Of course, if Coinbase was involved with something like this, that would be a big no-no, and I could definitely see some legislation or regulation coming down upon them because of this. But at this point, it doesn't really seem like much besides a report from the Wall Street Journal, so we'll have to wait and see more. Adam, I'll throw this up to you, get your take on it, maybe a little bit more of an explanation about why this sort of thing matters for exchanges.
Yeah, so I am not an expert when it comes to all of this particular stuff, but I do know enough to tell you that proprietary trading is something that is not restricted to cryptocurrency exchanges. And in fact, all of the big banks have proprietary trading desks where they are somewhat notorious in some cases for taking exactly the opposite bet that they're telling their clients to do. You know, they're paying clients who are paying them for advice, and then sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but they're taking the opposite side of the bet. That feels problematic to me. And I got to tell you, I don't really care if it's an exchange that's doing it or if it's a big firm that's doing it on the banking side. It seems like that's something that at the very least should be disclosed. And again, these things sometimes, even when they are disclosed, are just not properly understood. So again, it comes down to not a Coinbase issue, but sort of a whole market structure issue and a transparency issue, I think, more so than that. But that's kind of my only read on it. Again, I don't really know enough about kind of Coinbase's internal operations to really have much more of a comment than that. Jen?
Yeah, what was interesting to me, so I think, Coinbase's shares are down. I think it's almost or more than 70%, right? And so they are looking for ways to generate revenue that is not based on retail trading. We're in a bear market. Retail traders are being much more cautious right now. And so these experiments are to be expected. I think the way that the story is reported in the Wall Street Journal is interesting, and it makes me think, who is telling the truth? There is a little snippet in that story. It says, the people who spoke to the Wall Street Journal said employees were discouraged from sharing information about the new trading business or discussing it in internal communications. That sounds very strange, dodgy to me. I think if you're telling your employees don't talk about this and encouraging people not to share, you can expect reports like this to come out in the Wall Street Journal. Employees are going to wonder what's going on behind the scenes, especially when your company is being closely looked at by regulators for other things. And so I wonder what's really going on. It doesn't seem cut and dry. Coinbase's response was really interesting. I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of the story. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd actually take the opposite approach. I think that's probably pretty standard corporate communications, right? Try to keep the walls up and keep employees inside, not talking to outsiders, especially when Coinbase has gotten so much flack over the last few years and it's gotten a lot of press time. I can see that they would not want anyone talking outside the walls. And Coinbase is not a finished product, right? They're launching a lot of different things. I think they're moving towards prime brokerage, or if not prime broker already. They're adding like a lot of different financial services to their deck. Right now, most people know them as a crypto exchange where you can go buy whatever tokens on your mind. But in the future, they'll probably be a lot more than that. Like, they have Coinbase Vault. They have a lot of Coinbase staking products. They recently launched Coinbase Cloud, which is basically like an API product for developers. And I could see them moving into proprietary trading like this as well. The question, however, is like, how are the internal structures set up within Coinbase to protect the clients from being screwed over by other employees at the company. The bottom line is Coinbase wants to make money. Like you mentioned, Jen, like they're down 70% year to date. A lot of firms are down a lot of money this year, especially crypto companies. So I will have to add that in there. But Coinbase must be looking for other sources of revenue. Something like this would make sense in the future. The question is, like, how do you protect your clients that you currently have from your own team when it's trying to launch this sort of trading desk? Adam, throw it over to you.
Yeah, so another angle that I would take on this story is that when you're thinking about sort of cryptocurrency as a movement, right? Really what you're looking at here is something that's being driven at least on the currency competition side, which is again like the Bitcoin side of things, not by things that are happening within the world of crypto, but things that are happening in the real world, in the traditional financial world. And the only reason why something like Bitcoin is even in the slightest interesting is because we live in a world that has effectively an insolvent monetary system that is in the process of collapsing very slowly and with much pain. So when you think about it from that perspective, what you're looking at is something where it's not about cryptocurrency, it's about everything else. And so we look for sort of indications of what's going to happen. We abstract things. One of the biggest abstractions I think that many people who are not deep within the industry have is Coinbase. They look to Coinbase as the first major publicly traded company on the exchange side that's really kind of hewn towards US regulation as sort of a sign that things are becoming normal. And so the performance of Coinbase is actually really important. Not because anybody's invested in it, I honestly don't care about that at all, but because of what it signals about what the industry is doing. So whenever you see attacks like this that appear like, hey, that's actually normal in the real world, or this is actually something that isn't kind of out of the ordinary or typically worth reporting, but it is reported, and especially when it's reported in this sort of breathless manner, you can also just take that into account, that sure, there's the narrative about Coinbase, but more importantly, there's the narrative about cryptocurrency and kind of what Coinbase means to that and represents within that makes it almost a symbolic company in many ways. So with that said, I think we can probably move. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I had my little breath. I just want to add to Will what you were saying there. I didn't mean to insinuate that Coinbase is doing something dodgy or strange. What they are doing is completely legal. But Will, I do want to respond. The best way to get people to start talking is to tell them not to talk. So I think this is maybe a lesson in internal communications. If you're saying, don't tell anyone about what we're doing to a company with hundreds of employees, I think that you can expect that employees are going to start speaking amongst each other, and then reports like this are going to come out in the media.